I got a treatment and I'm here and I slipped. It's hard. It's very hard. Especially in the area when everyone's doing drugs in your face. It's a trigger.
Yeah, I moved down here when I was like about 10 years ago. And I've been homeless like for 10 years.
On the streets. The waiting lists are a long time for when you're on a street, right?
So like, I need a bed now?
Yeah.
And they give you a bed in 3 weeks' time? I was supposed to go to detox this morning, but I'm going to wait for another bed in a better place. Because some places are just drug dealing centrals.
In Vancouver's Downtown Eastside, staying clean is not only a personal battle. It can become a battle with the environment around you. On some blocks, drug use is not hidden. It happens in the open, right next to people who are already homeless, hungry, exhausted, or trying to recover. For someone who wants to stay clean, that environment can be extremely hard. They may want to change, but every day they still have to walk past the same streets, the same pressure, and the same temptations. When there is no stable home, no quiet place to rest, and no clear way out, staying clean becomes much harder than outsiders may think. Even when someone wants to leave the street, finding help is not always quick. Shelter beds can fill up fast, and some places require people to call first, check availability, or wait for a space to open. For someone with no stable place to stay, that waiting can feel endless. They may want to get inside, but the system does not always have a bed ready when they need it. So another night passes, and the street remains the only option. That is what makes Vancouver's homeless crisis so difficult to understand from the outside. It is not only about people refusing help. It is also about help being too hard to reach, housing being too expensive to keep, and certain neighborhoods becoming places where crisis gathers because there are few better options left. In this episode, we'd look at what is really happening in Vancouver, why the Downtown Eastside became the center of the crisis, how people are pushed toward homelessness, and why temporary support has not been enough to solve a long-term housing problem. If you find this documentary meaningful, please like and subscribe to support future episodes. 1. The people left outside the city's housing system. In 2025, the city of Vancouver counted 2,715 people experiencing homelessness. Among them, 703 people were unsheltered. Across Metro Vancouver, the count reached 5,232 people, the highest number recorded in the region's point-in-time homeless counts. These numbers show that homelessness in Vancouver is no longer a hidden issue. It can be seen on sidewalks, near transit areas, outside service centers, around older buildings, and in parts of the city where people without stable housing gather because they have few other places to go. For people living outside, daily life becomes a constant struggle to manage basic needs. Finding a place to rest, keeping belongings safe, staying dry during long periods of rain, and finding access to bathrooms or clean water can take up much of the day. What most people experience as normal routines become difficult tasks that must be solved again and again. The street also removes privacy. A person's most personal moments can happen in public view, not because they want attention, but because there is no private space left. Bags, carts, blankets, and small possessions become the only things separating someone from complete exposure. This is the part of homelessness that numbers cannot fully show. It is not only the absence of housing. It is the pressure of being visible when life is unstable, tired, and unfinished. It is having nowhere to retreat, nowhere to reset, and nowhere that truly feels safe. Vancouver's homeless crisis is often discussed through counts and reports, but the reality is lived hour by hour. Behind every number is a person trying to get through another day in a city where even the most basic sense of security has become difficult to hold onto. 2. The center of Vancouver's crisis. To understand Vancouver's homeless crisis, it is impossible to ignore the Downtown Eastside. The city of Vancouver describes the Downtown Eastside as one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, but also as an area facing several complex challenges at the same time, including homelessness, housing issues, drug use, unemployment, and the loss of businesses in the community. This is why the Dietz is not just another neighborhood in the city. It has become one of the clearest places where Vancouver's housing crisis, poverty, addiction, and social support gaps meet in public view. The numbers help explain why this area matters. In a 2025 city memo about daytime drop-in spaces, Vancouver staff used the city's homeless count of 2,715 people and a separate figure of 456 people living in SROs to estimate the need for daytime support. These SROs, or single-room occupancy buildings, are especially important in the Downtown Eastside because they often house people with very low incomes who are close to homelessness or trying to avoid it. The concentration is not accidental. City staff noted that 86% of SRO buildings are within walking distance of daytime drop-in spaces, especially in the Dietz. That means many of the city's most vulnerable residents are clustered near the same small network of services, shelters, low-cost rooms, food programs, and outreach supports. This is why the Downtown Eastside can feel like the center of the crisis. It is not only because homelessness is visible there. It is because the neighborhood has become a place where people go when they have run out of better options. Some come for services. Some stay because cheap rooms still exist nearby. Others remain because leaving the area can also mean losing access to food, support, community, or the few people who still recognize them. But this concentration also creates a heavy burden. When poverty, unstable housing, addiction, mental health struggles, and daily survival are pushed into the same blocks, the neighborhood begins to carry more than any one place should carry. The Dietz becomes a symbol of failure, even though many people there are simply trying to survive inside the only support network they can still reach. This is the human contradiction at the heart of Vancouver's crisis. The Downtown Eastside is often judged from the outside, but for many people living through homelessness or housing insecurity, it may also be the last place where help is close enough to find. The problem is not that too many vulnerable people are gathered there. The deeper problem is that the rest of the city has not created enough stable places for them to go. Priced out before they ever reach the street. For many people in Vancouver, homelessness does not begin on the sidewalk. It begins much earlier, when the cost of keeping a home starts moving faster than the money coming in. In the 2025 Greater Vancouver Homeless Count, among people who had been evicted before their current experience of homelessness, the most common reason behind that loss of housing was not enough income. That reason was reported by 44% of respondents in that group. This matters because it shows how often homelessness begins with a financial gap, not a single dramatic event. Vancouver's rental market makes that gap harder to survive. City data based on CMHC's 2024 rental market information showed the overall average rent in Vancouver was about 1,967 days per month, up 4% from the previous year. For someone with a low wage, unstable hours, disability income, or income assistance, that number can become almost impossible to carry. This is where the crisis becomes less visible, but more dangerous. Before a person loses housing, there may be months of trying to hold everything together. Rent is paid late. Other bills are delayed. Food becomes cheaper and less reliable. A phone plan, transit fare, medication, or a family emergency can suddenly become the difference between staying housed and falling behind. That is why Vancouver's homeless crisis cannot be explained only by what people see after someone is already outside. By that point, many smaller failures have already happened. The rent was too high. The income was too low. The waiting list was too long. The support came too late. What looks sudden from the outside may have been building for a long time. Mental health challenges, addiction, family conflict, illness, and job loss can all push someone closer to homelessness. But in a city where housing is already expensive, those problems become much harder to recover from. A person may be able to survive one setback when rent is affordable. In Vancouver, one setback can become the beginning of a much longer fall. This is the human reality behind the word affordability. It is not only about market prices or housing charts. It is about whether a person can make one mistake, lose one job, miss one payment, or face one difficult month without losing the ground beneath them. For too many people in Vancouver, that ground has become too thin. They are not simply choosing the street. They are being priced out slowly until the city leaves them with fewer and fewer places to stand. 4. Temporary help in a long-term housing crisis. Vancouver is not a city with no response to homelessness. There are shelters, outreach teams, food programs, nonprofit services, supportive housing projects, and different levels of government involved in trying to keep people from being left completely on their own. The City of Vancouver says it supports people experiencing homelessness through grants, partnerships, direct outreach, shelter, free or low-cost food, and other services. BC Housing also funds outreach programs that meet people where they are, whether they are on the street, in a shelter, or in a temporary place. These services matter because they can give people immediate help when life has already become unstable. Supportive housing is another major part of the response. BC Housing describes it as subsidized housing with on-site supports for people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. In Vancouver, the city has also partnered with BC Housing to create 350 new permanent supportive homes on city-owned land. This kind of housing is important because many people need more than a room. They also need support with health, income, documents, appointments, and the daily structure required to stay housed. But the problem is scale. Vancouver's response exists, but the crisis is larger than the systems built to contain it. A shelter can help someone get through a night. Outreach can connect someone to services. A supportive housing unit can change a life when it is available. But when demand is higher than supply, help becomes something people must wait for, compete for, or repeatedly try to access while their situation keeps getting worse. That gap is where the frustration comes from. On paper, there are programs. On the street, there are still people waiting. A city can have policies, grants, and partnerships. But if the number of stable housing options does not match the number of people who need them, the crisis remains visible. This does not mean the work being done is useless. It means the work is not yet large enough, fast enough, or connected enough to meet the depth of the problem. Temporary support can reduce harm, but it cannot replace permanent housing. Food programs, outreach, and emergency beds can keep people going, but they cannot give someone the long-term security that allows a life to rebuild. The human lesson here is simple. A person does not recover from homelessness only by being managed through services. They need somewhere stable enough to begin again. Until Vancouver can turn more temporary help into permanent exits, the city will keep treating the symptoms of homelessness while too many people remain trapped inside the crisis. 5. What Vancouver must fix before more people fall out. If Vancouver wants to reduce homelessness in a real way, the answer cannot stop at emergency response. The city needs more exits from homelessness, but it also needs stronger protection before people lose housing in the first place. The first problem is supply. Vancouver's own Housing Vancouver strategy says the city must reduce the housing affordability gap and shift more housing delivery toward rental homes. That matters because many people at the edge of homelessness do not need luxury housing. They need basic, stable, affordable places where rent does not consume almost everything they earn. Permanent supportive housing must also be expanded. Vancouver is working with BC Housing to create about 350 new permanent supportive homes on city-owned land. Projects like this are important because some people need more than a door and a bed. They need housing connected with support so they can manage health issues, income paperwork, appointments, recovery, and the daily pressure of staying housed. But even that is not enough if the system only reacts after someone has already lost everything. Prevention has to become a bigger part of the solution. BC Housing's Homeless Prevention Program offers portable rent supplements and support services for people in identified at-risk groups. That kind of help matters because a smaller intervention at the right time can sometimes prevent a much deeper crisis later. This is where Vancouver has to think earlier, not only bigger. A rent supplement before eviction, a caseworker before someone disappears from the system, mental health support before a crisis becomes public, and addiction treatment connected to housing can all reduce the chance that someone ends up outside with no clear way back. The solution is not one program by itself. It is a chain that has to hold together. Affordable rental housing keeps people from falling. Supportive housing helps people who need long-term stability. Prevention programs catch people before they lose their home. Outreach connects people who are already outside. Health and recovery services help people rebuild enough structure to stay housed. The human point is simple. A city should not wait until someone is sleeping outside before deciding their life is urgent. The most humane solution is not only to pull people back from the street. It is to stop more people from being pushed there in the first place. For Vancouver, fixing homelessness means treating housing as the foundation, not the final reward after someone proves they are ready. Without that foundation, every other solution becomes weaker. With it, people have a real chance to recover, reconnect, and begin again. Six, a city should not only manage what it can see. The hardest part of Vancouver's homeless crisis is not only that people are living outside. It is that the city has learned how to manage the crisis without truly ending it. There are services, plans, housing projects, outreach teams, and public discussions. All of that matters. But when the number of people experiencing homelessness keeps reaching new highs, it becomes clear that management is not the same as a solution. A city can move people from one block to another. It can clean a sidewalk. It can open temporary spaces during difficult weather. It can create reports, strategies, and pilot programs. But if people still have no stable place to go, the crisis has not disappeared. It has only changed location. This is where Vancouver has to be honest with itself. Homelessness is not just a street issue. It is a housing issue, a poverty issue, a health issue, and a failure of timing. Help often arrives after a person has already lost too much. By then, rebuilding a life becomes much harder than preventing the collapse in the first place. The people on the street should not be treated as the problem that needs to be hidden. They are the evidence of a deeper problem that has already been ignored for too long. When a city focuses only on what looks bad in public, it risks forgetting what life feels like for the person being moved, counted, or managed. Vancouver does not need more ways to make homelessness less visible. It needs more ways to make homelessness less likely. That means treating people as human beings before they become statistics, before they become complaints, and before they become part of a crisis the city can no longer look away from. A city should not be judged only by how clean its streets look. It should also be judged by how hard it works to make sure fewer people are forced to live on them. 7. The crisis Vancouver cannot keep pushing forward. Vancouver's homeless crisis is not a problem that appeared overnight, and it will not disappear through short-term responses alone. The 2025 count shows a city and a region still moving in the wrong direction, with more people experiencing homelessness than in previous counts. That is what makes this crisis so difficult to ignore. It is not only about tents, sidewalks, shelters, or one neighborhood carrying too much pressure. It is about a system where too many people can lose stability faster than they can find help. If the root causes remain untouched, the crisis will continue to return. It may move from one block to another. It may become less visible in one area and more visible in another. But people do not stop needing housing, support, treatment, safety, and dignity just because the city changes where the crisis is seen. For Vancouver, the question is no longer whether homelessness exists. The question is how long the city can continue responding after people have already fallen through. Real change will require more than emergency beds, more than reports, and more than moving people away from public view. It will require a housing system that gives people a stable place before their lives become impossible to hold together. The people living through homelessness are not separate from the city. They are part of it. Their presence on the street is not only a sign of personal hardship. It is a warning about what happens when housing becomes unreachable, support arrives too late, and survival becomes something people are forced to manage in public. Vancouver can still choose a different direction, but that choice has to begin with honesty. The crisis cannot be solved by hiding it, softening it, or waiting for it to become less visible. It has to be faced at the level where it begins: housing, prevention, healthcare, income, and long-term support. Until then, Vancouver will remain a city where thousands of people are counted, discussed, and managed, but not yet given what they need most: a real place to come back to.